Good morning. Happy Tuesday from Ribbon Candy Hooking. How are you? I'm Deanna. Welcome back. Let me see. All the old buddies are here. All my, not old buddies, all my usual buddies are here. Let's see. Martha, great to see you. Let me know as soon as your surprise arrives because I want to talk to you about that right away. Wonderful Tuesday. Glad you're there. Donna, great to see you. I loved seeing that amazing piece. You know what? Let me show it right here. This month's ATHA, right, that we were using yesterday when we were talking about Ami Mali Hicks. We're going to pick up on that today. But the article about her in this issue of ATHA, June, July, is what brought me to the ATHA. But I also wanted to look into the back and look at Catherine's excellent article, Region 10 Worm Challenge. I wanted to show this too. Let me show this now. This is another one of the great features of this current month's ATHA. And this piece here is Donna's piece that I really, really, really love. Super Canadian in feel, right? All these motifs. Now that character in the middle, that reminds. See, I am so not well versed in anything but like Emily Carr's basic life and timeline and works. That reminds me of one of the places that she spent a lot of time. Am I right about that, or am I just losing it? I mean, I know I am losing it, but it reminds me of some of the sort of characters and totems and things like that in the places where she would live and work and paint and all that stuff. I just wondered, it was a really strong association, and I just love this piece, Donna. I just love it. I just love it. I looked at it for a long time, and I love the colors. I love everything about it. And I love Catherine's piece, her ducks, and she sent me that to do too. And as soon as I can, I picture myself doing it over Christmas because ducks remind me of my dad because he carved his little decoys and he set the little eyeballs in, you know, with the little stones. So cute, so cute. But this is a beautiful article about the 2020, at the end of February 2020. This is a Canadian group in Region 10. I'm sorry, not Canadian, Idaho. Donna, you come to, I think, Arizona, is it, to be near Catherine for part of the year? And that's when you two link up for Region 10? Maybe. Um, but yeah, so yeah, Arizona, end of March. But yeah, they did a challenge, as you know, a lot of ATHA groups did last year during isolation, continued, but for a lot of people. But a worm challenge, which is a great thing because, you know, when everything's not open and you're not constantly going to rug hooking stores, if there even is one walking distance to you or something like that, it became harder to get supplies for a while. And worm challenges were a great thing to do. So this article that Catherine wrote, this really, really good, shows some of the rugs that came out of that challenge from Region 10. I like this one too, the reindeer. It's really nice. I mean, these ATHA magazines, I can't say enough about them. They are so well done. I really enjoy them. I won't show the whole article because it's good to get the subscription and get the issue. You know, you see these a lot too on you know, the rug hooking pages. I'm not a huge, I have to say, I'm gonna stick my neck out there and it's gonna get chopped. But I'm not a huge fan of the rug hooking buy and sell stuff on Facebook anymore. I've just kind of had it. I've had so many bad experiences myself with things not showing up. My latest box exploded, and the girl's giving me a hard time about reimbursing me. She believes that the books are in a tidy pile, 21 books somewhere in the United States, but the post office says no. But she continues to believe. Just so many bad experiences, but nonetheless, there are often back issues on the rug hooking buy and sell pages. I think the Canada one is a bit friendlier in general. That's my impression. And I've also been mysteriously locked out of the U.S. version for a reason that I've never known. I never know why I get locked out of stuff because I never post stuff. But anyway, I'm gonna leave that alone. This one I wanted to point out because I particularly love it. And the reason I love it is because I'm going to return a little bit to Helen Albee tomorrow because Betty Calvert in Canada sent me a great blog that I had not found relating to Helen Albee. And we did that last week. And, you know, I'm about to release the swatch set for Helen Albee with the mystery pattern that I won't show. I'll show you the mystery pattern for Fiestaware because I've got Fiestaware back in the shop. That's the mystery pattern that comes with your Fiestaware. But tomorrow, because it's my last day before my trip, I'll release the Helen Albee set, right? The Abenaki rug set of colors. And those will be available as a swatch set. Normal price. The Cape Cod ones were special because they were underdyed, overdyed, and then hand painted. So those were like gallery, without getting ahead of myself, gallery caliber. I mean, it was just hours and hours and hours of work. But the Helen Albee set, as I've shown, are just solid 20-piece set of swatches like the others. So that'll come out tomorrow, and I'll return to the conversation about Helen Albee because Betty Calvert sent me that great blog. So I want to update you on that. But it makes me think of this, right? Because this looks like a very sort of Native American inspired rug. And I just want to say this is a pattern by Mildred Sprout, right? Occasionally you see vintage Mildred Sprout patterns around, and I love to see them. I love to make mental notes about whose pattern is whose or whom or whatever, but it's a beautiful pattern. The colors are what really kill me with this one. I absolutely love the colors. They slay me. But I thought it was worth saying, and I'll remind you tomorrow, some of these, Native American inspired designs, they might often look like they're Helen Albee because hers are so mysteriously lost and elusive. But many of them are Mildred Sprout, and many of them are Jane McGowan. So, and a few Pearl McGowan, but more Jane McGowan. So that's worth mentioning. If you ever are in an antique store and you find a rug with this kind of Native American inspired design and you're thinking, oh, is it a Helen Albee? I'd really like a Helen Albee. Just remember that the Helen Albees are clipped. And if the rug is finished, like if it's a work in progress and it's not clipped, it might be a Helen Albee. But, and it should say if it's not finished because you should be able to see the edges, hopefully. But if it is finished and it's not clipped, it won't be a Helen Albee. It's probably a Mildred Sprout or a Jane McGowan, just as the odds go. So worth mentioning. Interesting enough. Donna, Robin, good to see you in cloudy Wisconsin. Oh man, it is windy. It is windy and chilly here too. But the sun is out. I'm wondering how cold it's going to be when we get to the Cape next week. We always get there so early. I'm not much of an ocean person with the sharks right up at the shore these days, like literally at the shore. But we go swimming in the pond, and I have a wetsuit. If I can even zip it up this year, which now that I think about it, I don't think I'll be able to. Many more pounds this year, and I could barely zip it last year. It'd be like 10-pound sausage in a 5-pound sack. But I'll give it a shot to get into the pond because it's like it's so cold, and the kids don't feel it. I don't understand how kids are so detached from physical discomfort, but they are. They can sit in a pile of like sticky ice cream and not be bothered. They can sit in literally freezing cold water, not be bothered. They can sit in the raging sun and not feel the heat. It's like, it's crazy. It's just being a kid, I guess. Like so few little worries. Kira, good morning. I got to write back to you. Sunny Tuesday. Well, maybe the sun will come this way. The wind is kind of blowing it away. Linda, good morning. And PN Club. Oh, nice. Ribbon Candy Hooking and Punch Needle Club. Okay, I got it. Wow, I thought it was PB. I was thinking peanut butter. I'm hungry. That is adorable. I love that abbreviation. Doreen, great to see you. Good morning. Tara, great to see you. And Penny, I just did you won at bingo, right? Penny won at bingo, and she said, send me a half yard of like tie-dye mix of jewel colors. I did do the jewel colors, Penny. Maybe I should check with you. I did jewel colors, but in a more sort of softer, summery palette. It's a beautiful, beautiful piece. It's very tie-dye looking, very like primary driven, but lighter, kind of summery, beachy colors. So let me know what you think about that. And I can also send you a photo. It's out on the line drying. I did a half yard, and it's beautiful. April, good to see you. Kate, good to see you in DC. Chrissy, good to see you. Kirsten, you made it. I thought you were over at the DMV. Good to see you. M.E. Shelley, good to see you. From North Carolina, happy Tuesday. Sheila in Benton City, happy Tuesday. Amber, good morning. Great to see you. And Joy, great to see you in sunny Florida. Jill, the usual suspects exactly. Great to see you. Beverly, everybody's here. I love it. I just love it. All right, good. Checking your... Janice, great to see you. Lisa, great to see you. Anita, you are there. You celebrated Victoria Day yesterday. That was exciting. That was something new for me to learn about too. Great to see you. You're waiting for your ATHA. Oh, I bet it's going to be there any day. I got mine 3 business days ago. So it's probably right behind, hopefully. Jody, good to see you. Oh, all the buddies are on. Lori, great to see you. All right. I'll send you a photo when I get back, just to be sure. Because it is super tie-dyed, and it's definitely primary color driven like jewel color. but a little bit on the light side, like a little bit of a summer version of a jewel tie-dye. So I'll let you see it before I do it. So from this point on, other than sets, if you're going to put in an order that's like a kit, I'll be doing it when I get back because I'm gone for a couple of weeks. So anything that swatch sets, yarn sets, those are done. So those will ship. Unless it's on back order. The Cape Cod one is already on back order. Those sold out just from me holding them up yesterday. Thank you so much to everyone who grabbed those. But everything else, I think I've got in stock right now and can ship today or tomorrow. But everything new that comes in, I only have today and tomorrow, so I'm right at the end of what I can do. I'm finishing up this month's kit, which already has a lot of interest, and I'm so happy because I think it's my best thing ever. I really feel it is. So I'll be anxious to finish that in the next few days and show you. And unfortunately, that will be shipping as soon as I get back, too, because I'm waiting for more yarn from Lacey. She's very fast, but she just can't keep me in the yarn. I'm going to have to order much larger amounts. Hey, Anne. So that'll be fun. And I have the Quimper set ready to go. I'm going to show you because I used the Quimper picture for today because I didn't know what to use. I have the Quimper yarn set ready to go, 2-ply. That goes perfectly with my little punch needle that I sell that's super inexpensive and works as good as anything, in my opinion. It's like a finer one. That's why the 2-ply is great with it. I also got a great brainstorm today. I'm just going to tell you, I'm working on it. I fired off something exciting, and I'll tell you what happens. I had a great brainstorm. I think I'm going to start because we love being together to do classes and to do Zoom. And, you know, even when things return to normal, which they slowly are, we're still very far apart. Geographically, we're so far apart, many of us. So planning things here and hook-ins here and get-togethers, and it still doesn't help friends who are further away. So I was thinking about starting another monthly thing, a monthly group called Hook and Book. And it'll be a book club. And what made me think about it was that book. I've gotten so much of a good response on that 1940s book about the auctioneer, and there was a large segment on her creating the hooked rug for her stairs in it, and that was the reason I even brought that up. But I have another book in my hand, and I'm talking to the author of it now to see if we could maybe work something out. But it also involves a heavy amount of rug hooking, which is exciting. It's a contemporary book. But I'll tell you more about that. But in general, I won't be able to find a book every month that relates to rug hooking. But I figured if we want, we could do a monthly thing where we talk about our book and hook at the same time, just for like an hour or so, just chat and just like a book club. I used to run a book club in my town here, and I haven't done that since before COVID. So I really miss talking about books and reading books together. I thought it might be just another fun thing that we could do one evening a month, and just to be together and talk and work on our projects at the same time. So that could be really fun. Hey, Heather. Good. I'll let you know how that evolves because, like I said, I got a little iron in the fire this morning. I got a really great idea, and I got a little iron in the fire. So that is coming along. Now, I want to get, you like that, Robin, too? Oh, good. I'm glad some of you like it because, hey, even if there's a few of us, I figured we could take turns hosting it and picking books. I don't want to be like the queen bee who picks all the books. But, you know, when I pick the book, I'll host it, and then I'll say, does anybody else want to pick the book next? And then the next person can pick. By host, I mean just, you know, maybe have like 5 or 6 questions that we can put out and people can say, oh, I felt like that too, or no, I thought differently, or oh, I like this character more than you. I thought anything, you know, anything. Not a graduate level, highly intellectual, challenging conversations, fun conversations, sharing opinions and impressions, lighthearted, not academic, for funsies, right? Just for fun. So we'll do that. So in the meantime, let's go back to this book, which I really have enjoyed. Again, I'm going to just make the point one more time that when we're looking at these older books, and indeed when you're looking at any book, you are reading instructions and you are reading about design ideals from a person who has strong opinions because they have written a book. So again, this goes the same today as it did in 1914 when this book was written. You know, the person who wrote the book has an opinion on how to, where to get this stuff, in what kind of design you should be working, because it revolves around their taste and their experience and their world. And you made that great, you reminded me of that time when we had that class together. You made a great point, and I'm glad you said it because I completely forgot that I had ever said anything that was sort of intelligent and interesting. But Anne reminded me that during one of our classes, like, hooking classes, a while ago, that I said something like, I don't even remember saying it, but she said I said something like, she was saying, oh, in this book it says to do this, in this book it says to do that. How do you know what to do? And I said something in reply like, well, it's going to be different from book to book because each writer is different, has a different way and different taste. And I said to Anne, if you were to write a book, it would be different again, right? It would be your opinion, your how-to, your everything. It's going to be different from person to person. And that is especially true with this book, just like it was last week with Helen ALBEE. Her opinions were very, very, very strong. And it is good to have a strong opinion. And for Ami Mali Hicks, who we're talking about today and started talking about yesterday, she has very strong opinions. She is of a class where she has traveled a lot, and she is very well versed and well ensconced in the newly emerging movement that will later become known as the arts and crafts movement. She is aware that there are lots of gallery shows around her where potters and sculptors and textile artists and painters are working in a new style. And again, that is the emerging arts and crafts style at the turn of the 20th century for us here in the US. So this is part of her world. This isn't part of everybody's world. But this is the design aesthetic that she loves. She loves this style of design. And this is what she'll push in this book with her designs. That one colored piece that's in that book that I used for yesterday's thumbnail, absolutely beautiful. Very, very much of the sort of 1920s, 1930s. So this book came out in 1914. So this was even earlier. When you see a design like this, you must be thinking 1920s, 1930s, right? Because this arts and crafts movement, this is when this kind of design was very mainstream, had become mainstream. It took a long time because, remember, this movement starts in the 1880s in England. It takes a long delay before it gets here, and certainly before it gets into rural and more remote areas. So in this book, she's going to talk about not just hooked rugs, many styles of rugs. And it is extremely helpful reading about it because, again, she talks about knitted rugs, crocheted rugs, penny rugs, scallop rugs, different kinds of rag rugs, loomed rugs, Native American rugs. She casts her net very wide. That's why this is a larger book. Oh, thanks, Sarah. I'm killing it. I cut the sleeves off this because nothing fits me anymore, but I collect pennant flags, like wool pennant flags, only the wool ones, the older ones, of amusement parks that are no longer there. And I'm looking for a couple, like mine, which was called Rocky Point in Rhode Island. But yeah, thank you. I had to get it when I saw it had a pennant flag because my collection is one of my favorite things. But she says a lot of interesting things in this book that are insightful because she's living at the turn of the 20th century. And we tend to forget daily life things, just daily incidental things that she just mentions very matter-of-factly in this book are things I would never think about. I need to be reminded that it's part of reality and part of life. Just like in Helen ALBEE's book, where she talked about going to your local rug hooking store, your local pharmacy that would stock many rug hooking patterns. All of these kinds of matter-of-fact things are just not part of our lives anymore. And it's interesting to stumble across them. So she talks about different kinds of rugs. For example, I'm reading here, the needle-woven rug deserves special mention here because in some respects it differs radically from other rugs. It originated before colonial times, and that's a solid fact. Not the hooked rug, but anything made with a needle instrument as opposed to a hook instrument. Through the skillful craftsmanship of the Native American Indian tribes, particularly the Navajos. So in the beginning, where she talks about in the chapter some old-time rugs, she is talking about the Navajo rugs, and I brought this up yesterday because of Helen ALBEE. They had absolutely polar ideas in regard to what was attractive in a native rug. We're talking about woven rugs only, but remember, Amy's favorites are the very monotone, original, pure sheep wool colors, gray, black, white, off-whites, and nothing else. Those are her favorites. The more colorful Native American rugs that are loomed and come a little bit later with natural dyes from surroundings, she's much less fond of. So she's real clear about that. She goes on in the next chapter, chapter 2, to talk about dyes. Now, it's a small chapter, but it's another very helpful. It's like all of the information in a crucible, burnt down. It's just what you need if you're interested in natural dyeing. This is a book without color, and this is a book with very few illustrations. So um, like with any dye book, of course, the modern dye books are better if you're thinking about natural dye or chemical dye, because you get to see colors and swatches and color variation. It's just descriptive in these books, and I have to say the descriptive passages describing plants and colors are just lush and beautiful to read. It's like poetry. It's like haiku, but not super helpful if you're dyeing. But still, texture and atmosphere. She has a long chapter on the braided rug. I think that's her longest chapter. Although she says in this book that she considers the hooked rug to be the most important rug form. There's a longer chapter on the braided rug because in this book, every chapter is a how-to on how to execute that style of rug. So she is teaching you how to braid a rug, and she's doing it quite thoroughly. Then the next chapter is the scalloped doormat or tongue rug, like lamb's tongue rug, that we often refer to as the penny rug as well. There's a nice design here of this version of a handmade rug. So pretty, huh? And I have seen these. I've seen them twice recently. Once up in Maine at no, it was Vermont with an antique store, and it was something like $4.75. I put photos of it on our Facebook group, Rug Hooking and Punch Needle Club. It was really nice. It was very, very faded, and I kind of liked the faded colors more because when you lift up the lamb's tongue, underneath was a color that was about 100 times more intense in color saturation because it wasn't faded. But it was just a lot for a rug that wasn't hooked to just have as like to say that I have it, a little feather in my cap for $475. So I passed on it. And then I found another of the same kind of rug, the scalloped rug or the lamb's tongue, at the Elephant's Trunk Flea Market when I went a couple weeks ago with my sister. And again, he wanted like $350. So people always know what they have these days. It's just that's the internet, isn't it? So that was another. It wasn't nearly as good either. It wasn't nearly as good. But my point is, you do see them. And they are interesting. And we're interested in textiles, right? Not just rug hooking or punch needle. We're interested in textiles, history of textiles, and I think probably art in general. These are beautiful decorative pieces to have. But the problem often with these rugs is number one, they're extremely fragile because they're sewn. Number two, they have very irregular fading because of all the floppy tongues covering like the majority of the wool that's underneath and still really well preserved color wise. Number three, it's very hard to display them because you can't put them on the floor. They'll immediately atomize, right, as soon as you step on them. And if you put them on the wall, all of the flaps want to flop forward, tongue twister. So they're hard to display. So it's just, this is a hard category of rug unless you have some kind of a custom frame built where you can really look at it and enjoy it. It is a nice rug to stumble upon without a doubt. Chapter 5 is devoted to the knitted rug. This is another enormous chapter. And then chapter 6 is the crocheted rug. She gives patterns for all, like one or two. They're beautifully executed in what is, again, like an early arts and crafts style. She's very tuned into this movement. And again, she's very ahead of the curve with this because of her travels, because of her class. She's very up on what is fashionable, whereas the person standing next to her will not be, will say, that's a weird design, because they haven't seen anything like it yet, because she's way at the beginning of her curve. Now, chapter 7 is our chapter, The Hooked Rug in Cotton and Wool. That's the title of the chapter. And she often refers to a hooked rug as a pulled rug, which people did do earlier in the 20th century. Pulled rug, as in you're pulling the loops up from your backing. Pulled rug was just about as common as hooked rug, so either of those things will be the same thing. If you're not prodding it, with one of these tools that look like it's sort of letter opener, emery board kind of thing with like more of a dull tip, if you're not prodding it or sewing it with a needle, you're hooking it or pulling it. So they all fall into the one category. She talks about the history of this craft. It's very clear, as if we didn't need a reminder, that 1914 the internet wasn't there. She's very unaware that right around her in New England and Canada, there are lots of centralized, localized groups, concentrated populations that are working on rug hooking. Not just missions, but groups that are very well evolved in 1914. Some of them have already come and gone, but she's unaware of them. And no blame there, right? I mean, how would you possibly know other than word of mouth, or if you happen to travel to a place that there's a large rug hooking community? So she talks about two village industries that have popped up, one in the mountains of New Hampshire, which I believe is the HELEN ALBEE group, and one in Northeast Harbor, Maine, which I believe is the Maine mission. I believe. I believe. I could be wrong because there can be more that I'm not aware of, but I think those are the two, and I think those are two that we've mentioned before. So those are the only two groups that she's aware of at this point. She makes no reference to, for example, in Canada, the Garrett blue nose patterns. She makes no reference to that. She makes no reference to heritage in Rhode Island. She makes no reference to Edward Frost. So it's funny what's here and what's not here in this book. When I say funny, I mean curious. What's here and what's not here in this book. This is kind of charming. I'm reading directly here. She says, I remember the first time I saw a hooked rug. I at once realized that in its technique were the possibilities for the development of a craftsman-like rug. Again, she's making a reference to the current movement, the arts and crafts movement. It came from Prince Edward Island in Canada. The maker had evidently been carried away by the enthusiasm for her skill in hooking and had ingeniously and likewise ingeniously worked a pattern of raised roses in the center of her rug. It was very solidly constructed and much above the average level of the rug's surface. I'm going to pause here and say this sounds like a Waldoboro rug, doesn't it? I question that it would have been from Prince Edward Island. It sounds like a Waldoboro rug. Of course, if you're new to us and new to the channel, the Waldoboro rugs are from the Waldoboro region of Maine. Good morning, Judy. And they are sculpted, very densely packed rugs with thin wool strips, densely packed and then shaped like topiary is shaped, in the garden. Shaped with a lot of three-dimensional relief, a very high pile and a clipped surface. And it really sounds like she's referring to a Waldoboro rug. But she says it was a real obstruction, but there its reality ended. It made the rug inartistic and unserviceable. First of all, inartistic because, now this is directly from Helen Albee. This is directly Helen Albee's sentiment. Firstly, because nature cannot be reproduced in woolen thread. It can only be represented in a medium with artistic reality. That phrase alone makes me feel sure that she read Helen Albee's book, or that she spoke to Helen Albee, which she never says she had. But remember, in this book from last week, Helen Albee specifically says, do not handle your flowers and your leaves. Do not handle organic subjects in a realistic way because you will never be able to compete with Mother Nature. They will never look good. They will never look good enough. They will never look as good as nature. So do them in a graphic manner. Do them in a stylized manner. But don't attempt to do them in a realistic way. So for that reason, Helen Albee's book comes out like 7 or 8 years before this book. And Amy is basically saying the exact same thing. Nature cannot be reproduced in woolen thread. It's almost word for word. The raised, second, because she's talking about why the Waldoboro rug is not a good or ingenious thing. Second, because of this inappropriate plan, the rug could not last well. The raised portions, being more exposed than the lower portions, would wear out sooner. Interesting. To be honest, I mean, we have so many now machine-made rugs. I forget what they're called off the top of my head. Oh, I almost had it too. They're very highly sculpted, but machine-made, right? Very varied pile on them, sculptured in the same way that a Waldoboro would be, but with a machine these days. Still very desirable. It's going to pop in my head at 3 in the morning. But she's making the claim that if you were to have a rug that had an uneven top, a sculptured clipped top like a Waldoboro, that it would be very impractical because it would wear first. I can't comment on that because I don't have a Waldoboro rug. And if I did, it wouldn't be on the floor. But I've seen Waldoboro rugs that have had considerable use, and I have to say, I certainly can't comment on the trip factor, right? The jack tripper tripping over it factor. But they look like they work just fine on the floor. I certainly don't know, but they look like they work just fine on the floor. So you're welcome to comment on that because I just don't know if that's a viable reason to say that these are not ingenious rugs. So one of the greatest benefits which comes from founding Village Industries is raising the standard of public taste. I have to say I kind of take exception to that sentiment because the idea is that when you sort of commandeer a local industry or you create a new cottage industry, that the reason for doing it is for improving people's taste. So, number one, for me, that kind of pre-assumes the idea that people have poor taste to begin with. And secondly, that your taste is better than theirs. So maybe this is just a 2021 layering of perspective. Um, but I have to say, what she's saying about improving public taste is very consistent with Helen ALBEE, and it's also consistent with the Maine mission. It's also consistent with the Grenfell mission, and it's also consistent with the Chetty Camp. So that sort of starting point of saying, I'm coming to this community, what they're making at the moment is not very high in terms of art standards, but we can improve on it, and I can help you do that because I've maybe got a little more knowledge and training in contemporary style, taste, and design. So you have to take it with a grain of salt. It is what it is, but that is what it is, right? So then she says, the study of design is not a matter of technical complications. The workers are taught the application of decorative principles, learn line arrangement, placement of masses, and relation of tone and color values. They are also taught to use reliable dyes, which produce permanent and artistic colors. And of course, she's talking about chemical dyes, not natural dyes. The workers themselves sometimes know of the valuable old dye recipes. These can be made serviceable by a systematic revision, replacing the rule of thumb by exactness and chemical proportion. So she's saying, in other words, if somebody comes to her with a pattern, or sorry, a color, like some kind of a damask plum or a choke cherry red, right? That she will figure out how to translate that very color, which is historic and mellow and lovely, using a chemical dye so that it can be measured, it can be reproduced, and it can be more accurate in the future. So she's saying, yes, let's look at those old colors, but let's figure out how to turn them into contemporary chemical recipes so we can use them again and again. I think that's solid. What she's talking about, though, when she's talking about training people to do the rugs in this new style that she's about to put to you, she's talking about reliable dyes, she's talking about teaching decorative principles, she's talking about teaching line arrangement, places of color, value, and tone. But what she's not talking about, what she can't talk about, is that elusive thing that William Winthrop Kent talked about, and that is mood. That is that mysterious quality in old rugs that cannot be reproduced, and it cannot be taught. She does not mention mood in this rug. She mentions technique because, remember, in retrospect, the arts and crafts movement is very teacher-trainer driven, right? People like William Morris are highly trained, highly skilled, and their work crosses many genres, not just wallpaper, textile, decorating, architecture, sculpture, many mediums, right? These people are highly trained, highly skilled, and come from a background of technical learning. There's no room for mood in this, right? So this quality that I love in the old rugs, this mood, this feel that is hazy, and you can't put your finger on what it is, but it gets you right in the heart. That is not going to be something that she talks about in this book, because this is a book that is filled with arts and crafts philosophy, and it's all about technically doing something. So that's going to be a sort of shades of gray thing if you're thinking about getting this book and you are the kind of person who's inspired by that gray middle ground. That's not what this book is about. But this book is very good for talking about history. I'm going to run a little bit over here. And just the approaching another school of design in the early 20th century. I'm just going to finish this chapter and then we can return to this tomorrow. Hooked rugs are made from either cotton or wool, so very specific. Now, she's obviously not aware that the Grenfell rugs are made of nylon, right? And that there are other choices, and that there are people at home using worn-out velvet and, again, stockings, and all kinds of materials. She's very formulaic in terms of it's going to be cotton or it's going to be wool, and the design is going to look like this. Now, she's real specific, and she makes some interesting points about cotton versus wool rugs. They're interesting points for today too. She makes that really good point that it's worth remembering in the back of your mind, at least, that wool rugs, because she will recommend clipping, just like Helen Albee. She wants her rugs clipped. So Ami Mali Hicks, she considers a good rug to be a clipped rug. She says you should clip your wool rugs because when you clip them, number one, they can handle it because they will mat. They will softly mat. And, and they will remain strong and they will remain quite waterproof and impenetrable and dense and warm and serviceable. So you should do that with wool rugs, but you should not do that with cotton rugs. And she's very clear about this because if you're making a rug out of cotton and you clip it, the cotton is not going to mat. It's going to fray and you're going to have a problem. So she's real specific about that. She makes some very good logical points in here because it's a very cut and dry, logic/rules driven book. So she's very good at pulling those little points out that sometimes we just forget these common sense things. That's an important point to make. You don't want to clip stuff. Judy, you know better about this than me. Do you ever clip your t-shirt rugs, I wonder? I mean, if you're not using it on the floor, it's a different story, of course, because Amy's talking about using rugs on the floor exclusively. So I'd be curious about that, Judy, what your thoughts are about clipping a cotton rug. Because she's, again, 1914, she's really clear that you should not. Cotton rugs are not clipped because the cotton strip has no tendency to felt, it only frays. There's a whole page about that. She says, but cotton rugs have the advantage of being washable. Consequently, they can be made of light colors. Interesting leap here. So she's saying, for example, that the wool rug in dark tones of blues, reds, and greens is sufficiently substantial to be used in dining rooms, living rooms, especially in rooms, very specific here, with paneled wood, like on the walls, like wood paneling, in a simple style, and homes that are furnished with Norwegian painted furniture or mission furniture. Now, do you get the impression that she's talking about a very specific class of people here? People who have wood paneling for walls and mission style furniture and Norwegian style homes. She's not talking about people with farmhouses who live in the country. She's talking to people of her own class. But it's an interesting point because she's a tastemaker. She's wealthy. She writes books and she has a studio in Greenwich Village. She's a tastemaker of her time. She's a tiger woman. She's a suffragette. A tiger woman is my word. That's not an official term. But I mean, she seems like a cool, independent woman at this time. A rarity. That's why I say tiger woman. It's a huge compliment. But it's not actually a thing as far as I know. But I mean, she would be the person to say, this is how you do it, baby. This is what good taste is, and people would listen. So when she says you should use dark green, blue, and red rugs in your dining room, people are going to do that. Put it with your mission furniture, and use your cotton rugs. Make cotton rugs out of light colors, pale pastel colors, right? Because we're about to hit the 1920s, and all the pale pastel colors are about to be very much in. We're getting away from those heavy jewel tones of the Victorian period and moving toward a lighter palette. So she's saying use your light colors to make cotton rugs because you can wash them. So if they get dirty because they're light, you just wash them and then you put them back. And then she's saying do that and then put those rugs, for example, in the bedrooms and bathrooms. They can be light. They're prettier for rooms that are supposed to have prettier colors. She's giving you decorating advice at the same time. Just like I was saying yesterday, the wealth of knowledge and the amount of decorating magazines at the turn of the 20th century is unreal, staggering. And people are giving a lot of decorating advice. She's giving decorating advice here, telling you which color rugs go in which rooms with what kind of furniture. And this would be expected in a book of this era, that she would tell you, as a person of a certain class with a lot of experience, education, and travel behind her, you would look to her and say, oh, that would be ideal, wouldn't it, to have a room full of wool paneling and put down a pine green rug, Berber. No, I wasn't thinking Berber. That's a good one. No, it'll come to. It has to be at 3 in the morning, Judy, because it has to disturb my sleep, or else the universe isn't happy. But it will come to me, and I know you'll know it. It's a weird foreign word. Not that weirdness and foreign are the same, of course. If not on the floor, but on the wall. Yep, Judy says go for it. Clipping your. Judy is the master of working with her book, T-shirt, rug hooking with T-shirts. She's the master and the authority on rug hooking with cotton, particularly jersey, right? So Judy's saying you can clip your rugs on the wall. Perfect, of course. She wasn't talking about T-shirts. No, she wasn't talking about things with stretch. But nonetheless, it's just a moment. Just like the whole Pearl McGowan era, it was a moment. And what she's telling us, these tips that she's giving us about cotton for light, wool for dark, what rooms to place them in. This is, again, it's all opinion, but it's interesting. Anita says, love the Waldeboro style rugs, and I have a book on it. Yeah, I haven't, no, not shaved. No, no, it's like, it's a brand. It's a brand. But it's a brand like Kleenex that has become, the word has become the word, like the common word for this style of rug with raised surface. Oh, it's going to drive me. Oh, Aubusant, that's it, Karen. Aubusant, that's it. Thank you. That was going to drive me crazy. Thank you. Thank you. I can sleep tonight. Thank you. So this is just, this whole thing is interesting. We're running a little bit late. Well, we're running more than a little bit late. And I want to return to this tomorrow. So let me just follow this thought through. When she's talking about making a cotton rug versus a wool rug, where does one get their supplies at this time, right? This is going to be a thing too, because this this book is for people who are interested in learning the craft, a how-to book essentially. Um, but it's really geared for people who are of a wealthy class. So I don't know if that's an anomaly or not. I don't know if people from a wealthy class, like Amy, in general, were looking to make their own rugs. I don't know. But this is her sort of idea of where one goes about getting the material to make a rug. She says, perhaps it is less limiting to one's inventive faculties to start out to make a rug of entirely new materials, to make an attractive plan and buy the materials to carry it out. In other words, she's saying, if you're going to make a rug, really the best thing to do is to buy your materials. And again, this is not for everybody, because people who are living in farmhouses, people who are not as wealthy as her, that is not even a thought. It's not a thought. They're going to use scraps that they've got, and that's that. So, she's going to make patterns like the basket that have huge background areas, and she's assuming that you've bought enough material to make that background because she can and she has. So she's telling you should do that too, ideally. But again, this isn't going to work for every person. With old materials, one must cut one's coat to fit the cloth, and it requires much patience and skill to work out a scheme to fit the different amount of colors on hand. In other words, you can't have a big background if you want it all the same color. Then, too, it takes a great deal of time to prepare old materials, whether in cotton or wool, for they are usually more or less tender and must be cut or torn strip by strip. The hooking cannot be done as quickly either, for old materials are liable to break when hooked into the foundation and must therefore be carefully handled. It takes longer to prepare them, and then rugs made in this way cannot be duplicated. This is a big point for her, because of course she's selling her rugs in her studio in Greenwich Village, and she specifically says people will come in and say, I like that rug, and if she says, I'm sorry, that just sold, they'll say, I would like the same rug made for me. And then she's looking at duplicating the pattern. So she's thinking of everything. All her advice in this book is geared towards someone who is also making multiples of rugs because they are in business. It is not actually geared toward the woman in the farmhouse who's using scraps to make rugs. I think that last passage made that point clear. At the same time, I'm thinking on my feet here, but I'm thinking about the Hillstead Museum and Amy having taught there, in the 1900s, and like the decade 1900s. And I'm thinking about the family who lived there, their sort of caliber of wealth, the friends that they would have known who would have come to the house to take a lesson from Amy. I'm backpedaling now, thinking those people had money. So maybe this book was written mostly for them, because they were the people who were going to buy their material to make the rugs. They weren't the people who were going to go up in the attic or ask their neighbors for worn out clothes. Can you imagine the indignity? That would never happen with these people. But it's an interesting thought, isn't it? Because when I'm thinking of her teaching at this really lavish, decadent, beautiful country home of a wealthy family, visited by friends also of the same class, she would have been teaching people rug hooking who were of a class. So interesting, different twist. I just thought of that. Different twist. Anyway, let's keep the rest of it for tomorrow. We'll finish talking about just this chapter. I'm only going to look at this chapter in the Ami Mali Hicks book, And then we're going to transition back because Betty Calvert's wonderful email she forwarded me with the blog. We're going to loop back and finish up Helen ALBEE, talk about that particular blog. And then I'm going to be off for a while, so we'll talk more about that tomorrow. But it was wonderful being with you today. Oh, Martha says we have a handmade naturally dyed rug that is over 30 years old, and I have spot washed it many times because you have dogs. Not sure I agree that wool is not washable. Okay, that's a good point, Martha. That's a very good point. I don't know. She doesn't talk about care of rugs much in this book. I'll just double check to make sure that there isn't some little gem in there. I can't imagine that she's washing the rugs herself, but maybe she is. But I'll check. You know what? I'm going to check on that one point and see what her idea about washing a rug is. I'll see what she's using and what her method is, just in case there's something squeezed into one of the chapters. That would be worth noting. Because that's a good point. I don't really agree with that either. We do occasionally wash our rugs, not the old fragile ones, but the ones that are newer, 30 years old is fine, I would think. You are so welcome. I'm glad you enjoyed it. It was great seeing everybody. I'm going to get back to work and get these last kits out. Penny, I'll send you the photos. I have them back at the house, not at the studio. So I'll send you the photos, and you let me know if you like the sort of summer tie-dye colors that I did you. And if not, I can darken them up for sure. So I will see you tomorrow, everybody. Same time, same place, noon Eastern Standard Time, Ribbon Candy Hooking Channel. Please like, subscribe, comment, share, all of that stuff. I will look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Wrapping up, Ami Mali Hicks.